All right, so for this pre-algebra video, we're going to be doing lesson 2.3, which is all about distributive property. Now, I briefly got to cover it in the last video, and if you haven't seen that last video, which contains lessons 2.1 and 2.2, stop watching this video, go watch that one before you watch this one, okay? But if you have seen lesson 2.1 and 2.2, then we did get the chance to talk about distributive property, right? And distributive property was just a fancy way of saying multiplying the outside numbers with the two inside numbers. But what we're going to actually do now is actually solve each part of these, right? So, and we're going to do it on fresh new examples, all right? So, we're going to start off with something like number 3, actually. We're going to jump, before we do 1 and 2, we're going to jump into number 3, because these have actual numbers and 1 and 2 have letters. It doesn't mean it's any harder with letters. It's actually, to be honest, kind of easier without letters, with the letters. But let's do number 3 so you can kind of get an idea. And just like before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this outside number with each inside number. So the first part I'm going to do is 8 times 12, okay? And because I see a minus sign here, I'm going to keep that minus sign there, okay? Kind of keep it as it is. And now I'm going to do 8 times 4. Now it's time for me to actually solve it out. I'm going to do what's inside each of the parentheses. For example, 8 times 12 is 96. I'm going to keep the minus sign, and 8 times 4 is 32. I can then subtract it out. If I have to do it on the side, that's okay. 6 minus 2 is 4, 9 minus 3 is 6, and my answer is 64. Okay? So that's pretty much how you would do example 3, skill check 1, and this is all on page 56. So if you're not there, if you're not on page 56 and you're not really writing this down, kind of stop what you're doing, make sure you grab everything that you need now before I continue going. Now, we're going to jump into questions 1 and 2, though, of skill check 1, because even though this has letters, it doesn't make it any harder. If anything, it kind of makes it easier. Here's what I mean. We're still going to multiply the outside with the inside. However, let's start off with number 1 where it says negative 5 times x. The thing is, I can't really do anything with negative 5 times x. Okay? We're just going to leave it like that for now. I'm going to follow the symbol in the middle plus negative 5 times 6. Okay, I can work with that part. But first, let's work on the parts with the variables. If I'm multiplying a number with a variable or a number with a letter, I kind of leave it alone as this, negative 5x. You kind of just combine it together. No need to put the times symbol in between. I'm going to put the plus down, and then negative 5 times 6 is negative 30. And this is my final answer. Now another way of writing this, and this is the way I would kind of prefer it, okay, would look more like this, okay? So, or, this is another way, negative 5x minus 30. That's right. If you ever see a plus and a minus sign next to each other, or a plus and a negative, just put it as one big minus sign. It means the same exact thing. However, both answers are acceptable. They both mean the same thing. Okay, so now you kind of got an idea of how to deal with a variable. Number 2 might come a bit easily. So let's try number 2. We have negative 4 times 3, and you can write it out separately. And then the next part, we put that minus sign down, right? We kind of been copying that same sign over and over. So I'm going to bring the minus sign down, and then negative 4 times y. And remember, I can only multiply what I can multiply. So let's see. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Keep the minus sign alone. And negative 4 times y is just negative 4y. So this is one acceptable answer. However, I would accept another answer. Now, when I had a plus and a negative next to each other, it was just like one big minus. what do you think is going to happen, or what's another shortcut of saying a minus and a negative next to each other? Well, it actually means the same thing as one big plus sign. That's right. Two negatives can make a one big plus sign. So either one of these answers are acceptable. Now the last one, question 5, is a bit weird because before we were dealing with two numbers, or at least a letter and a number inside the parentheses. Now we don't really have two numbers. However, I can make two numbers out of this. Okay, Mrs. Elliott, what do you mean by that? Well, that 76 can be broken down as 70 plus 6. Okay, where I get the tens value place and I get the ones value place. And now I can multiply each part. 5 times 70, keep the plus sign in between, and 5 times 6. And we'll see if we can actually solve it. 5 times 7 is 35. I have a 0 here, so put a 0. Plus 5 times 6 is 30. And I can actually add these up, so I get 380. So if you notice, anytime when I was just dealing with numbers, my answer was a number. But anytime I was dealing with numbers and variables or letters, then my answer had both numbers and letters, okay? That's something for you to be aware of. Now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna jump straight into skill check number 2, and we're just gonna do 2 problems together, and we're pretty much done, okay? So skill check number 2, however, is not on page 56, it's on page 57. Okay, let me make sure that you guys can see it. If it's in the view of the camera, yes it is. Okay, so number 1 looks like this of your skill check. And number 2 looks a little more like this. And what they want you to do is basically fill in the blanks. So this one already kind of looks like a distributive property problem. Let's kind of solve it already. If I was to do 5 times x, that means I need to do 5 times x. Okay, now another way of saying this is just 5x. And if I was to multiply the 5 with the y, then that's 5 times y. So the correct answers are x and y. So as you can see, all I'm really doing is just filling in the blanks as if I was working this out. Now, however, for number 2, it kind of looks a little off, kind of looks backwards. It kind of looks like some of these that were broken off into parentheses. So now we need to pay attention to what's going on. Let's see what number is being multiplied twice. It looks like 4 is being multiplied twice, and that probably means that this 4 is out here. Because if I work backwards, let's see, 4 times 3, hey, that's there. And 4 times 5, yep, that's there. That means 4 is the number that needs to be placed. And this is everything to do with distributive property. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me about it.